The chapter starts and we see it is an ordinary day at school. We see somebody get slapped in the back by a huge hand, or it's not that huge, but anyway, of course he says, "Chan Yi, why didn't you wait for me?" He then says, "Haven't I told you yesterday?" He mentions to him as he's kind of nervous that he's going to visit his mother in the hospital. His friend then says, okay, I will accompany you to go see Auntie. He asks if Auntie is alright. And of course he says, honestly speaking, the hope of waking up is super slim, and this is kind of sad. We then arrive at a bank, and of course Chinese friend mentions, go get the money first, and I'll go to the toilet. He then withdraws 6,000, but just at that moment, somebody holds up a gun to him, and guys, come on, this only happens in anime, right? Or manhwa, it probably doesn't, but anyway, he says, give me your money, and I thought it was pointed at our MC, but it was pointed at the lady or the clerk. He says, give me 1 million, and he says as he holds our boy hostage, or I will eliminate him. Just behind him though, we see a dark shadow, and press with a fire extinguisher, he gets his head butt in. He then says, I just saved you, and Chan Yi mentions that was quite reckless. But just at that moment, we see bullets fly past, and it hits our MC's friend's head. We see him fall to the ground, and he yells out his name, which is Chen Yi Nan, and rest in peace to him. What a goat. He then looks at the guy who shot him, and it is somebody with a shotgun. And our MC sees a gun on the floor, and he jumps out to reach them, and oh gosh, our MC really does have guts to go and grab the gun. They then shoot at the exact same time. He hits the guy in the head, but the guy with the shotgun has terrible aim, but he still manages to hit our boy in the stomach. He then says, as he is on the ground and crying, it's so cold, and it feels like he is going into the ocean, and of course to the bottom layer. He mentions that he really just came to the bank to collect medical bills, and if he dies here, mother and sister will die. He then says that he mustn't, and of course, he then wakes up, and we hear, go fight like a wild beast, and I shall grant you a second life, and prove your value. He then wakes up in this sort of ancient cave or mountain or some sorts, and this is the Eternal Realm, and I'm really excited what's to come. We then see Chen Yi, and he says, hey, Chan Yi, where on earth is this? It's so gloomy and cold. And we see a notification for both of them saying, welcome both of you to the realm of eternity. They then look at their hands, and of course they have a watch on it, and of course the system says, fortunately, you have qualified for the assessment of the realm of eternity, and they begin to think that this is some sort of joke. They then become shocked after hearing, after the initial assessment, you will be granted the divine masks, and the assessment details have been provided in the drop-down menu. And this, of course, is a way how they're going to prolong their lives. Our MC looks down and says, what drop-down menu? And then, oh gosh, we then see Chen Yi point towards something, and he says, isn't that your younger sister? And Qian Yi says, oh my gosh. He then says, let me go check. And our MC says, Chen Yi Nan, just wait. He says, what are you waiting for? Isn't that your sister, Qian Du Du? He then mentions, that's why I told you to wait. It's impossible for her to be here. Her cram school hasn't even ended yet. He says that's why we need to confirm, as you see her standing on top of a cliff. He says that Qian Duo Duo is very strange, and there is an indescribable sense of disharmony about her, and he says that that's definitely not his sister. She then jumps off of the cliff, and it seems like she's good at parkour, and she enters a waterfall. He then agrees to follow her, and so they begin to track her down. They then enter through the waterfall, and he says there's none here either, because of course he mentions there's no tunnel entrance beneath the waterfall. They think it's an illusion, but just at that moment, right behind her, the sister is there. And oh my gosh, it's like Rika, because there is a big worm, and it is about to consume her. Our MC says wait, but it was too late. And of course, we see Chen Yi Nan, and he says wake up quickly, because he's fading away. He says don't come here as he is in the mouth of the beast, and he tells our MC to just run, and he gets bitten up like it is Attack on Titan, and oh gosh, we even see his arm censored here, and this is brutal. We see player Chen Yi Nan failed the preliminary selection, and is confirmed deceased, and our MC says, this is hell. We are then back at Earth, and we see somebody mentioning, we deeply mourn for the loss of Chen Yi and Chen Yi Nan, as we see even his sister crying. And he says, the guy beside her, don't cry Duo Duo, it's Uncle's fault. Uncle failed to take care of you and your brother. He says, now let's pray together, as we are looking at our MC's body. The system notification mentions, Chen Yi, your real-life body will soon be cremated. And so after losing his physical form, he won't be able to return to the mortal realm. And so our MC is literally just standing in front of this huge beast. And the system says, your mission is to slay the target, the dark ghost angelfish. And by doing so, you will gain life force and return to the mortal realm. And according to the past procedures of the funeral parlor, you only have 10 minutes left. And he begins to, of course, clench his fist as we see the timer on the wristband on his wrist. And let's go, our boy is definitely going to destroy this thing. We hear, run, Chen Yi, run. And we see the monster right here, and it's like he's getting an image of Chen Yi Nan, and the monster is about to bite him, but it barely misses him. And our MC says, anglerfish lantern, huh? We see the monster, and our MC grabs onto this thing, is sort of a rope, and he says, give me back Chen Yi Nan. And he begins to pull, and our boy begins to get some forearm veins on his forearm. He then pulls it out, and blood comes gushing out of the monster. And we see, mission accomplished, obtained uncleansed dark ghost fragment, return to the mortal realm, and of course, the system says, initiating teleportation. But our MC says, what about Chen Yi Nan? And the system mentions that he has already failed, and it is confirmed that he is deceased. He then gets super angry, and our MC wakes up, and he is in his funeral clothes on the flower bed. And of course, he comes out of the coffin, and everybody is shocked, and our MC is so confused, as they all begin to run away. Duo then says, brother. She then cries saying, I thought I would never see you again. He then looks over to his right though, and of course, it is Chen Yi Nan, and rest in peace to him, because he saved their MC from the guy with the pistol. He is now back at his apartment, and he mentions that it felt like a dream, and he says that this watch was really brought into reality. And we see the veins coming out of it. It looks kind of weird though. He mentions that it is already 12 o'clock, and it seems that it turned into 10. He says, wait, is this a countdown? What is it counting down for? 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. And just like that, he jumps and falls down to the cliff. And it seems he falls down to the ground, and he wakes up to the realm of eternity. He says, darn it, because of course, he suddenly gets pushed through some buildings, and we see his left arm, which has been completely obliterated. We then see some sort of flying paper figure right here, and it goes to attack him, and he goes to the left to try and dodge. He says there's no time for me to think, and the system mentions, friendly reminder, for safety during battles with the Dark Ghost, it's advisable to use the Divine Masks. We then see the paper thing begin to attack him even more, and our MC is holding on to his left arm, and he says, I remember now, the Divine Masks were the reward from the preliminary assessment. And he says, but he never received it at all. And he asks the system, how do you use the Divine Masks? And the system says, simply wear the mask on your face, and he gets cut on his leg. And he says that the system is talking nonsense. He's on the ground right here, and of course, he is about to get wrecked by this paper thing, but somebody comes in and slices the paper. And we see that the paper monster yells out in agony. We then hear dangerous, and the lady is in front of him, with of course a paper about to attack her, and she does a hush symbol, and of course the paper comes to a halt. She then says, it's time for you to go, and she literally cuts it up like it was paper. And well, it actually was paper, guys, but yeah, anyway, her sword, I guess, must be really sharp. And wow, this girl really is beautiful, but it seems like she's also wearing a divine mask. He says, our MC, as he looks at her back, so powerful, and just with a single slash, she was taken away, or sorry, the monster was taken out. She then says, hey, and her MC says, I'm here, nervously. And he then says, thank you boss for helping, may I ask? And then she says, I don't have time to chat with you. If you can still move, run now. She mentions that the twin origami has 2 in total, and the one just now was a power type. There's also an invisible type. The mission will only be completed when both are eliminated. Our MC then says, I think it's safer for us to be together, but she says stay away from me, because she mentions teaming up is useless, and everyone who arrives in the realm of eternity will take their own derivative tasks. She then says as she looks his way, do you understand? I came here to kill my target, and you staying here will just be in the way. And she walks away mentioning, if you understand, then run right away. The monster I'm about to face is much stronger than the origami. I guess I was right, it really was just paper. The origami just now. Our MC says, as he feels deserted, she's right. No matter how much I think about it, I'm just a newbie burden right now. And he says, how do I even begin to find that invisible origami? It's like finding a piece of paper in such a vast world like of course looking for a needle in a haystack. But just then we hear an explosion behind him, and he looks back, and he says that's the direction of the broken temple. And oh gosh, she gets sent flying towards our MC, but he manages to catch her, and we see blood coming out of her mouth. And of course, he says, "Hey, wake up, what the heck happened?" And she says, with almost all of her life force out of her eyes, "Quickly run." And we see the thing right here. It doesn't look like paper. This looks like a completely different beast. And it's right behind him, and oh gosh, when our MC turns around, he is not going to enjoy this. We then hear, of course, it is a monster saying, "Sister Faye, run quickly." And this guy goes to attack, and he says, "When did this guy get behind me?" This guy literally has a laser beam, guys, and our boy barely manages to dodge it once again, and he says, "The drop down menu." Of course, because of course this is how he's going to wear the mask. He then says as he opens up the drop down menu, "Hurry up, hurry up." He then clicks on the mask, and we see that the data is loading. It may take a few minutes, and of course it is at 98%, but that monster's finger is about to hit our MC's eye. Of course, the lady then of course uses her ability, and it freezes the monster. Our MC reaches 100, and it seems like he has equipped the Sticks of Serenity, Afflicted Divine Being, King of Hell, Extraction complete. We see a huge explosion here, and we also see an awesome sword right here, and the girl is completely rizzed by our MC. Our MC then slices a monster, and oh my gosh, she says, "Faceless is at least a B level, Dark Ghost of course," and he took it out in only one hit. And she's then blushing, and she mentions, "It seems like today's mission is already complete. We'll talk about gratitude once we meet again." She then disappears, and her MC says, "We'll meet again? What do you mean?" She says, "We'll meet very soon." And she teleports away, and I'm guessing she's talking about meeting him in the real world. But who knows, that's just, I guess, it is a great guess. Well, I just said guess twice, or whatever. We then see, of course, it is Chan Yi, and he is on the table sleeping after being in school or class. We then hear, "Class monitor Chan Yi," and her girl is yelling out. She says, "It's getting late, and we're going back to the dorm. Do you want to go together?" Her MC says, yeah, no, you can guess, you just go ahead of me, and he says, "See you tomorrow." Our MC mentions that it's probably because the defeated enemy was so strong, and we see the timer on his wristband, and it is around 1 hour. He then says, "They're calling me to the student council at this hour, it's almost 10 o'clock, because of course he received a notification from the architecture grade group 106. He then arrives at the place and he knocks saying hello, and we see it is a girl from the Eternal Realm. He says, "It's you," and oh gosh, it seems like this girl might be his senior. Oh yes guys, this is already going to be so awesome. He then says, "How come you are here?" And she says, "As the president of the student council, it's only natural for me to be here." And her MC's jaw literally drops, and he says, "Wait, what?" She then says, "I've known you since you became the class monitor. And by the way, as a student council representative, she even attended his funeral, and it seems she really cares for him." She then says, "I knew you were chosen by the realm of eternity, but yesterday's encounter was purely coincidental." She says with her beautiful red eyes, "Well, Chen Yinan is really dead. His body was cremated, and without a complete body, there's no possibility of resurrection." She then says, "Don't blame yourself," but her MC here seems pretty pissed, and I wonder how you guys would feel if something like this happened to you guys, and if it was me, I would definitely be very sad. He then grabs onto her collar because she says, even if the weak manage to pass the beginner trial by luck, they'll die sooner or later, and her MC is mad and he wants her to show respect. She of course doesn't say anything and she doesn't have a reaction, and she then chokes our MC, and she says, "First of all, don't splash your saliva on me. That's basic respect." And she literally pushed him onto the table, and she is well on top of him too, and yeah, that's why you don't let's just skip this panel, guys. He then says, "Is this what you call repayment?" She says, "We've only just begun," and her MC mentions, "This is inappropriate," but it seems like he doesn't know what's going on. We then see her pull out a gun, and of course our MC gets completely scared, and boop, he wakes up back in the Eternal Realm. She then says with her weapon as she's leaning on it, "First of all, no matter what situation gets you in the realm of eternity, the first thing to do is to put on the mask and be on guard." She says that being a second late in putting on the mask increases the chance of death, as we see a huge fireball launch towards him, but she pushes it away, and it seems that she really does care for him. She then asks, how many dark ghosts have you killed in total? As she looks up at this flying, beautiful, sacred, pretty scary beast though. And of course our MC says, I've killed 3. 1 angerlish fish, 1 humanoid monster, and 1 invisible origami. She then says, check your backpack. There should be fragments from there. We then see, of course, she does the hush symbol again, and it seems like the phoenix or whatever falls down to the ground, and she mentions that he needs to eat these fragments that he brought out. He says, I'm not gonna eat this. I'm not gonna eat this. But she forces him to eat it, as she opens up his mask. He then begins to cough, and of course she mentions devouring the fragments of each dark ghost increases your experience, and it's the only way to level up. And our MC has reached level 4, and he has unlocked the skill Soul Summoning. It is a big black and purple word. Of course, we then see Dark Ghost Anglerfish, and we see a doppelganger of him come into existence. She says it seems like your skill is to use the abilities of the dark ghosts you've devoured. And we see right behind her, somebody pops up, and it seems like she says, this is my target, and oh gosh, this guy really looks like Raiden. We then see the target about to charge towards them, and she says, I'll seal his movements. You find a chance to kill it with 1 blow. It then attacks him, and her MC is ready to fight it, but then of course, she then pulls him out of the way, and she punches him, but she also gets damaged as well. But we see that his fist is completely sealed. We then see, of course, a big purple or pink light come into the existence, and she says, take a look at your mask and read it. Our MC mentions Sticks of Serenity, Grade F, Strength B, Speed C. She says no need to look further. And of course, she begins to sweat saying, he has such low stats, yet he managed to take down Faceless with a single slash last time, and she wonders if it's a fluke. We then see it is the Phoenix, weird looking Phoenix from earlier, and she says, sorry, I forgot about you, and Tianyi, you will handle this one. He then begins to fight it, and she mentions he even goes toe-to-toe with the F-grade Flamebird, and his mask is only F-grade. Was it really just a coincidence last time? Because he's having a hard time. But just at that moment, we see that was actually the anglerfish's clone illusion, and boom, he has invisibility. We then see, of course, he begins to circle around it, and he is right behind it, and yes, he is about to use ability, and oh my gosh guys, this guy looks absolutely sick. And we even see he's using the Faceless Monster's laser cannon. But then, well, it sort of fails, and we see a funny looking panel right here. Yeah, I didn't expect this. The monster then begins to charge up a fireball, but she slashes it right in half, and he bows his head saying, thank you so much, Senior. They then wake up in the real world, and she is still on top of him because I'm guessing that they both died or went to the Eternal Realm at the same time. And then he asks the Senior, could you come down for a moment? We then see there is a slap on his face, and she says, my name is Chen Fei, and feel free to ask me any questions, and if you still want, we can come team up anyway. And they begin to shake hands, and they say, I'll leave it to you then, Senior Fei. But then we see a red-haired lady with green eyes, and it seems like she is eavesdropping on this conversation. It seems like Chen Fei the Senior isn't just a hapless brat, and she notices, saying, who's there? And we see it is a lady with red hair. It is Chengwon Yu. And she asks, what are you doing here? Our MC then says, let me introduce you. This is our class secretary, Chengwon Yu. And of course, Chengwon Yu then says, hello, Senior. Oh my gosh, we have our own rivalry starting already. Chen Fei then says, is that so? Classmate Chengwon Yu, what brings you to the student council office this late? Peeking through the door. And she says, I saw you calling the class monitor help us late, so I came to see if there was anything to help with. I didn't expect. And her MC says, no, don't worry, of course, it's not like that. She then slaps her MC's head, and she says, we are not dating. But just at that moment, we see a huge necromancer sort of hand come up behind her. And of course, she says, I will definitely not tell anyone. But then, she passes away as the monster or ghost comes out of her body. He says that her breathing and her heartbeat are slow. And we see Chen Fei then says this is a death-sleep syndrome. Her soul then begins to run out of the building, and Chen Fei mentions, come on, don't let her soul run away. Our MC is shocked because he said, doesn't that mean that there's no way to cure the death-sleep syndrome? But she says, actually there is a way, by killing the dark ghost that has devoured human souls, and you will acquire the soul fragments of the humans it's consumed. Our MC then stops and says, "So that means if I kill the dark ghost that consumed my mother's soul, I can cure my mother's death sleep syndrome?" And she says, "The condition is that you can find the one among billions of dark ghosts that consumed her soul." She mentions that we've lost it, and she says, "Go and search the teaching area," and she will search the corridor. He's finally found it, and just as he is chasing it, he has a door slammed at him, and it is teacher Chen Pan. And yeah, this guy already seems suspicious. He then asks why Chen Pan is there, and he says, "Shouldn't I be asking you that? Qian Yi, a first-year architecture student, why are you wandering around the teaching area so late?" He says, "Well, our class secretary Cheng Wan-yu suddenly fell into the death sleep syndrome and passed out in the council office." And then he says, "What the heck? Death sleep syndrome? Are you a doctor? How can you be so sure it's a death sleep syndrome?" So of course his teacher then folds his arms saying, "It seems you don't understand. Well, just go ahead and go home." Our MC then grabs him by the collar and he says, "Responsibility? Are these so-called responsibilities more important than Cheng Wan-yu's life?" And the teacher says, "Really? I'm a teacher and helping the school downplay such incidents is my responsibility, and let go of my collar and pretend nothing happened." But our MC then slaps this guy in the face and he says, "You're really hot-headed." He says that assaulting a teacher due to a moment of impulse will leave a stain on your record for life, and he even calls our MC a clown. We then see the ambulances arrive and our MC says, "Lost sight of it, huh?" And yeah, he says yeah. She then begins to sit down Senior Faye, and yeah, they really look like a good couple here, guys, and she really also got some cool drip. She then says this confirms that there are indeed dark ghosts lurking in the school, and her MC says indeed. She says, "Well, you probably don't know, but since May of last year, our school has seen a skyrocketing number of students suffering from the syndrome." Our MC begins to get panicked, and he says, "90? Why have I never heard of it?" She then says, of course, students who encounter the patients like roommates and such are compensated with a promise of recommendations for postgraduate studies and other conditions. And her MC remembers his teacher, and she says, "But it's not like there are no leads." She says that dark ghosts usually target vulnerable souls, such as those with serious illnesses or those who have a mental breakdown. We then see right here is a demographic, and we hear at this school, the 90 victims without exception are all students, and the dark ghost operates without restraint, as we see the involved parties here is at 100% of students. So it seems as if there is a protector for the dark ghosts in their school, and it seems our MC might have a clue. He then looks at her and says, "Sister Chen Fei, do you know the teacher Chen Pan?" We then see they are in a car, and of course she explains that you can call me Sister Fei, and if your speculations are correct, the only lead now points to Chen Pan, and we must report the known leads. Our MC then says, "Report? Report to whom?" And she says, "It's not like you and I are the only ones chosen by the realm of eternity, and because of this, everybody has secretly organized their own teams, which is definitely interesting." We then see, she says that the one I'm taking you to is my own hunting team, the Black Vulture hunting team, and I'll give her a 6 out of 10 out of that name, but let me know what you guys think because it's not that cool. Anyway, she explains that the one on her left, their driver, is a member of the team. His name is Song Zi Guang, and he says, "You can call me Old Song." He then explains that little brother, our Black Vulture, is the largest, of course, in the entire country, and with such a large scale, the death rate is only a fraction of a percentage, and he won't lose out. She then says, "It's not like you can join just because you want to," and the guy chuckles saying, "That's true, without the leader's approval, nobody can get in. We are in front of this beautiful building," and she explains to him that you can't speak randomly, only answer when asked. And by the way, our boy is so tall, guys. Do you see this? Our boy is probably like 6'3" or something. Oh gosh, I wish that was me. And he opened the door and we see a lot of beautiful people and beautiful personalities. We see one. His name is An Qian, and he is a leader of the Black Vulture team, and he has an S-grade offensive mask. And of course he says, "Really? She's the blade of the Black Vulture and an unknown little friend. And the blade of the Black Vulture is nobody other than Sister Fei. And she, of course, is a Chief Executive Officer. And she's an A rank, and her MC is just an F rank, but that'll change right soon." She then gives a report, and he says, "It seems like you have something else to say, student Xian Yi." And he says, "Yes, I want to join the Black Vulture hunting team." Oh gosh, and yeah, Sister Fei is kind of shocked. He says, "Which deity is his mask from? And what's the mask skill level?" She says, "King of Hell, F grade." He then explains, "Oh, King of Hell, right? The mask that of course always causes the user to die suddenly? Even if I make an exception to let you join the Black Vulture team, what exactly can you accomplish? He says, who do you think would entrust their own life to an F grade level? Our MC says, everybody had low levels at the beginning, right? I will work my best. We then find out that the mask grade will only increase by 1 level every 100 levels of the basic one here. So level 1 goes to level 100 after 100 souls, and from level F, you just go to level E, which is kind of crazy, guys. I mean, that's sort of like, I don't know if you guys play Valorant, but this is like a 10 times harder ranking system. And then of course, the leader, Anqian, then says, I'm not a ruthless person. In fact, you reported clues in the Stark Ghost attack, so I'm entrusting this mission to you. Sister Faye then mentions, you know, the perpetrator is likely a dark ghost capable of communicating and cooperating with humans. Sending Qi Yi alone is the same as throwing away his life. He then gets on the table, and he says as he stands up, I never expected somebody like you to say something like that. He then chuckles and says, which one of them is willing to let their subordinates die alongside an F-class kid? And of course, he says as we see the other hunters beside them, who is willing to go? I, Anqian, will never stop you. He then says, let me ask you then, don't you think that the lives of everyone here matters as well? And he reasons with our MC with his hands out like he is some sort of lawyer in court. Everyone present is a comrade who can entrust their backs to each other. You might as well ask them, who would trust their back to you? Our MC then says, I understand. I'll go alone then. And he mentions, but to kill that dark ghost that devoured my mother's soul and save her from the death sleep syndrome, I've decided to join the Black Vulture hunting team. Sister Faye offers to go with him, but then we hear, Chen Fei, you're the blade of this team, and you are also a holder of an A-grade mask. It's good to be willing to help others, but don't forget what your mission is with this team. She then says as she looks back, kind of annoyed, it's not my mission to watch somebody I know go to their death with cold eyes, and it seems like Sister Faye has taken a liking to our boy, Qian Yi. We then see Qian Yi is at the hospital, and he says, in reply to Sister Faye, stop scolding me. To save my mother, there's no way I could find that dark ghost that consumed her skull alone. And he says I have no choice. She says, you know how strong the enemy is? She explains that dark ghosts range from high SSS to low F grades, according to the masks, of course. And she mentions that the talent and strength vary drastically between each level. And yeah, hopefully our boy won't just completely get destroyed. She explains that the stronger the higher the grade of the dark ghost, the more it resembles a human, and as you see it right here. And the dark ghosts she faces, such as Faceless and Forehand, are around B grade, while her mask is around, of course, an A grade, so she can handle them quite easily. He then says, Faceless, I remember he sent you flying from the temple to the reed pond, at least 400 to 500 meters away. And she says as she chops his head, it wasn't how you think it was, and he calls her a violent woman. And yeah, I mean, what type of woman would just do that out of the blue? Our MC then says, what just happened? She mentioned that he ambushed me and I took a direct hit from his laser cannon. That's why I was injured. She also says that if the Dark Ghost was cooperating with humans, this means that he's more human-like than, of course, any other Dark Ghost they've encountered. She says, in other words, he's at a higher level than any Dark Ghost you or I have ever seen or have ever faced. Our MC says, how dangerous is it? And no matter how dangerous it is, I have to go. Chen Fei, do you know Cheng Wan Yu? She says, yeah, we met during the organization of the sports competition, that's all. He explains that Cheng Wan Yu lost both her parents and has been living with her grandmother since she was young. Now that her grandmother is critically ill, she has to take on part-time jobs, like me, to make ends meet. And this is really sad that his classmate who really was looking out for him had to undergo this death sleep syndrome. He then says not even the King of Hell can stop me, because of course when the system mentioned to do your best to stay alive. She then says, aren't you the King of Hell, the user of the King of Hell mask? He says, Sister Chen Fei, which deity's mask do you wear? She says, I use the deity of wisdom, Mimir, and the name of the mask is a Silence Regret, and it's A grade, and she should be regretting having that. Okay, I'm not gonna even say the joke anymore. Our MC then begins to wonder, saying, well, it's kind of similar to Time Stop. It really has a good identity and a good ability, because its basic ability is to temporarily confuse and daze the target's thoughts, and that's why they stop their actions. Just at that moment, they see Chen Pan walking in the hospital. They then wonder what the heck they are doing there. And we see the doctor or the nurse says, "Mr. Chen, your wife's condition is stable. You don't need to visit every day." He says, "I know, you can leave first." The doctor says that since the outbreak of death sleep syndrome, there have been millions of cases worldwide. Not a single one has woken up without a single hitch. Chen Pan then mentions, "You don't need to tell me these things. I won't owe you for hospital and nursing fees to do whatever you need to do." And he says, "Understood. I'll take my leave." It seems that his wife also has a syndrome, and her MC says, "No, it doesn't make sense. His wife caught the death sleep syndrome, and he visited every day. He should be able to empathize with Cheng Wan-yu. Why, who would suddenly get caught up with the death sleep syndrome, right?" And she begins to ponder, and this really makes her think if the dark ghost was forcing him so that the dark ghost would help his wife. We then see her bump into somebody, and she says sorry, but then it is a monster. It says you can see, right? Ordinary humans can see dark ghosts. And oh my gosh, this looks like an absolutely humanoid, or at least the body and shape and just the facial features and everything of a human. And he says contract, because of course, he explains, "I know your mother is in the hospital, Chan Yi, and that red-haired girl is here as well. 93 patients in the school are here." And he says, "One today. I've already had mine today, so I'll let you go." And the monster says, "Tomorrow you should be careful as you see its face right here." And this looks absolutely frightening. Then see the demon or whatever this thing is, the dark ghost, and this is inside the school. And it seems like he's taking the soul of a 94th one. We then see, oh gosh guys, it is Chen Pan. And he says, "Leave as soon as it is over. The more likely we will be caught, if of course, the longer they stay." We then see the ghost, and he says, "You're not afraid at all." And it seems like Chen Pan can't even see him, and he can only hear the voice. And he says, "You don't have to worry so much. Though there are still 6 left in human terms, my current strength is quite formidable. But this guy looks like he hasn't eaten in years." And he mentions, "Let's have a feast today. Remove the contract's limitations." But Chen Pan says, "I remember you told me that the stronger the individual of your kind, the more they resemble in human appearance." He says, "Whether you want to become human or just want to disguise as one, since you want to wear the skin of humans, then follow the rules and don't play any tricks." The monster then says, "Heh heh heh heh, humans are so stuck in their ways, or is it just you?" And he says, judging from Chen Pan's words, it seems like he doesn't even care about you guys. And by you guys, he is referring to, of course, it is Qian Yi, who comes clashing from the sky with his sword. The monster then says, as he's literally having his hilt fight against our MC sword, "Your expressions are good, but your intensity is lacking." But then we hear, "Huh? I can't move." And we see that the dark ghost is frozen, and our MC tries to slice the monster. And he says, "Wow, didn't even have the strength to cut a person, huh?" He says, "Don't act strong and play any tactics." He then throws him, and he gets sent flying towards Sister Fei as well. She mentions, "Teacher Chen Pan, it seems you don't intend to explain anything." He then has his arms folded and he says, "The first option is to keep your mouth shut and leave this place, and the second option is to die." And guys, if I saw Chen Pan right now, well, let's just say that guy isn't really remaining the same, because I'm going to send him to jail. And he says, "It seems like Chen Yi has already chosen his path," and the monster launches at him. And she mentions, "Stop daydreaming, it's now." And she then manages to avoid the attack, and she starts to load up something. And behind her right here, boom, it is a laser cannon. And he says, taking a direct hit from a laser cannon is something even a steel plate would have a hole in. While we see the monster is completely unaffected. And it says, "Think about it carefully. Isn't this faceless's laser cannon?" And then the monster teleports right behind Qian Yi, and it stabs him in the chest. And then it goes towards, oh my, it goes right towards Sister Fei, and he has his hand on his shoulder, and he is ready to cut her up as well. She then manages to block his attack, and he has something else in store as he's about to unsheath his master blade. We then see a huge red ominous slice coming towards her direction, but then we see somebody tank it for her. This is the captain of the 3rd team, Cha Liang. He's a grade A agility type mask. He says, "Take this young man with you and leave, and I'll handle things right here," as he is referring to Qian Yi with blood in his chest as he's lying down by a tree. The guy then says, you can just leave. I'm quite confident in my escape skills, of course, if he gets any stronger, and they're referring to the dark ghost. She says as she walks away, as she is behind him, understood. Rendezvous at headquarters? He says yes. Rendezvous at headquarters. The monster then begins to rush towards them, and it seems like he has literal staples on his eyes to keep them open. Where are you guys going? But the guy then blocks his attack with his own sword, and he says, where are you going? Your opponent is me. We then see the monster get sent flying, and he says, you really are strong, huh? Introduce yourself, kid. He says, I'm the captain of the 3rd team of the Black Vulture Hunting Team, Chao Liang. And he says, of course, please take care of me. And oh gosh, this isn't really the time to be saying that. We then see it is old song ready for them. And of course he says, yo, by the way, Chao Liang came on his own accord. He mentioned that he'd be concerned about you guys, and it seems he wasn't sent here by the leader. He then tells her, of course, that we have to go to the hospital because Chan-Yi's injuries are quite severe, and the Dark Ghost is at least a S grade or a quasi-S grade, and so she is no match for him. He then says, what about Chao Liang? She explains we can only put our trust in him. He has an A++ grade mask, and in terms of speed and escape, nobody can outmatch him. The driver says nervously, this is way too incredible. It's been many years since we've seen a dark ghost capable of forcing a captain individual, such as, of course, the one that just came, Chao Liang, to use his miracle. Now guys, just wait over here, alright? Our boy MC then says with all the effort in his lungs, miracle, what is it? She explains, listen, you can't speak, because of course he's losing so much blood, and once he dies, he will enter the realm of eternity, and so he needs to wake up as soon as possible in the eternal realm. We then hear, hey, can you hear me? But then, of course, as they are driving down on this dark street, we find out that he is dead. We go back to the fight, and we see Chao Liang is in a bad position as the zombie seems pretty confident of the outcome of this fight currently. And Chao Liang mentions, even though you're this strong, do you really still need to cooperate with humans? Isn't that human just a burden? And the monster then explains, no, these 100 souls can't make any mistakes. He says to squeeze into the throne of the 8 dark deities I have been planning for more than 10 years. And of course Chao Liang mentions to himself in his head, the dark 8 deities, what could this mean? He then explains, well, of course, the 8 great deities are dark ghosts with a rating of S grade and above, and that is the ultimate goal for each and every one dark ghost. He explains the dark ghost becomes stronger by devouring human souls, but in reality, dark ghosts has its own level cap, as we see it right here, and here's a representation. He says, for example, I'm currently A+, just a step away from S grade, and he can still feel his own progress every time he devours a soul. And then Chao Liang then says, as he begins to power up, so you want to devour 100 human souls just to ascend into the S grade rank of the dark deities, right? He says, thank you for your information, but your dream ends here. Of course, the zombie is still cocky and he says, does it really matter if a dead person knows? And Chao Liang then mentions, wait till you've witnessed this move before talking. He uses Miracle Manifestation, the wind deity Boreas, and oh gosh, I'm really hyped to see how strong this move is. And oh my gosh, we literally see 2 statues here. This looks really scary. And he mentions that of course the realm of eternity is a dreamland where divine powers are stolen, and wearing the mask alone allows you to seize the power of the deity. But that is only the tip of the iceberg in terms of the deity's power, because among them are many exceptional individuals who spent years cultivating, and they merge the mask with their own soul, unleashing the mask's full power. And still, this is only a small portion of the deity's power, as we see our boy here, and he looks absolutely majestic, like he is an absolute deity of the wind, and this is enough strength to move the heaven and the earth, and this power is called Miracle Incarnate. We then see he teleports right behind the monster, and he is so fast the monster tries to swing back, but it is no use, and it seems like of course he was scattered by the wind. He then teleports once again, and he pushes a monster away, and he says, "What is this?" And right behind him is a tall statue with a harp, and oh gosh guys, this just really reminds me of Solo Leveling. I don't know about you guys. And of course, he wonders, I get it now. The 4 statues correspond to the 4 directions of wind, and that Mohawk guy can freely transverse through the wind. He then slices him in the corner of his eye, and his eye goes out, and of course, he slices our boy in half, but he just scatters in the wind. And oh my gosh guys, I really like Chaoyang. This is a pretty OP ability. He then says, "You dare to stay and fight alone, huh?" He says, "You're quite skilled." Chaoyang mentions, "Quite skilled." This is the domain of the wind. You're just withered leaves, only worthy of being torn apart in this raging wind. But then we get another explanation. Realm of Eternity. F-grade Dark Ghost, the 1,000-foot ability, like strengthening, as you see a really creepy looking centipede with like it has human feet instead of legs guys, but of course we then see it is our boy, Qian Yi, and he is fighting against this thing. We then see he mentions he didn't even realize when he struck just now, and so he wondered how he instantly made a move without making a sound, and he is referring to the Dark Ghost back on Earth. He mentions that, more importantly, the feeling of powerlessness from being killed in an instant appeared right there. And our MC then comes on top of this monster, and he says this is just a stepping stone, and boom, he kills a monster with absolute ease. We then see Qian Du, which is Chen Ye's sister, as he's lying on the bed, and she's lighting some incense just in case. Faye then walks into the room, and she says as she explains, "Don't worry, Qian will wake up really soon." She then says in her head, Chen Yi's wound has completely healed, and that means he probably won the fight, and waking up is a matter of time. She says she's more worried about Chaoyang. That Dark Ghost really isn't that simple. Our MC then wakes up kind of disturbed here, and Qian Du looks like, wait, what the heck? How the heck is my brother absolutely awake? And yeah, that is a power of the Eternal Realm, or defeating monsters in the Eternal Realm. Our MC says, "What's with this outfit?" And of course, Qian Du then says, "Well, every time you have an accident, as long as I dress you in a burial gown and burn incense, you will always wake up safely," but that's not the reason. We then see Sister Faye, and she is just listening to them go back and forth. She looks at her phone, and she says, "Hey, Qian Yi." She says, "We should go. The situation is urgent." He asks what happened, and she mentions, "Do you remember the person who saved us last night?" "Yup, that was the uncle with the mohawk." She then says that he is a 3rd team captain of our Black Vulture hunting team, and she says that he possesses an agility A-grade mask, Wind Deity. Old Song says he mastered Miracle Incarnation, and looking at our hunting team, there are very few who mastered this technique. And then he says, "Don't tell me he..." And then of course, he lost, as we see, a whole building absolutely destroyed. She then explained that don't worry, he's the best at escaping among us. And she asked the leader, "How's the situation?" And oh gosh guys, Anchuan then says nothing great, and as you can see, when I came in just now, I saw members of other teams mocking him, and I sent them away. And there's a huge crater on the ground guys, this is absolutely terrifying. And we then see Dan Ning, and he asks if she came back to the country. We then see her floating here with her purple aura or goo or whatever this is. It looks pretty cool though, I'm not gonna lie. And she is the 1st Squad Reconnaissance Division A-grade support mask, Dan Ning. And we see she uses Miracle Incarnation, Minemosin. I'm not gonna lie, I don't know how to say that, but it's probably something like that. M-E-N-E-M-O-S-Y-N-E, Minemosin. That's my best try, guys. I don't know about you guys. Anyways, of course, she explains to our boy that her mask is the deity of memory, and that can of course completely replicate everything that happened at the time. Our MC then looks behind him, and he sees of course Chaoyang is about to wreck the monster right behind him, but it seems like something else happened after that. Chaoyang then goes in for the charge, and he is about to hit the monster, but the monster disappears, and he wonders where did it go? But Sister Faye says, nope, it's simply not dodging. We then try to find out what it means, and of course we see the monster who is actually in the shadows, and he slices up Chaoyang, and she says it's harmless. Chaoyang can swap places with any wisp of wind, and attacks at this speed pose no threat. However, the Dark Ghost is very quick as well, and he moved inside one of the shadows. Chaoyang uses one of his abilities, 4-way Windslay, and the monster spits out blood, and he wonders if the monster is traversing in the shadows. The monster then goes into one more shadow again, and of course he's getting confused by this. But our MC mentions it should be the shadow of the grass, but continuing like this will definitely be disadvantageous for Chaoyang. And Sister Faye says, "What do you mean?" He explains that Chaoyang's movement is from one wisp of wind to another. Even if it's fast in theory, it can be attacked, because of course, the dark ghost can shuttle between shadows, as long as he wishes, meaning he can keep hiding in the shadows to avoid the attacks. And so, the previous attacks were probably just searching up what Chaoyang was capable of. And so now, the monster might have even more abilities. We see the staples on, of course, the monster's eyes. It breaks as he gives a very wide smirk, and he uses his ability, Miracle Incarnate, Myriad Hall Shadow Net. We then see Chaoyang falling down, and he wonders, what the heck, so many skeletons? Is this guy friends with Song Jin-woo? Just kidding, he didn't say that. But anyway, he crushes the skeletons with his 4-wind sleigh, but there are more right behind him. He mentions Chaoyang can't avoid it, and so he yells out and he causes a huge tornado which made the building break, and it seems like he is in the crater. He then is out of his form, and of course he is sweating very profusely. He says that no matter where you hide, as long as the object forming the shadow is destroyed, you definitely won't survive, right? But then of course the monster sliced him up, and it seems like he controlled his soul, and oh gosh, I hope he survived. The monster then says, "Was tonight the 97th soul?" And he says, "Almost, just 3 more left, and I hope that Chaoyang didn't die because he seemed like such a cool dude." Anchuan then says, "Oh gosh guys, that was close." He explains that nothing life-threatening is happening to him because he's currently at the headquarters. And of course he says, as you all saw, this dark ghost will be temporarily named Blade Ghost because of the use of a blade. Of course, he explains his basic ability involves shadow displacement, and with a miracle incarnation, he can summon countless skeletons from any shadow, and this seems like he's a necromancer, but let's just call him the shadow monarch of this world. Of course, we then see it is a lady from before. She says, "I need to go back to sleep," and it seems she used up a lot of her mana. Sister Faye then says, as she asks him, "Do we need to inform the captains of each team to gather?" And we hear, "Gather," and of course there's somebody standing on top of the roof. It is Mei Jue, the captain of the second team, and she seems like she is a thug. She says, "Do we really need to gather for such a trivial matter?" She then gets a vein on her forehead and she gets mad, saying, "Just kill that Chen Pon and it's done, is it not? Why does everybody make such a big deal?" She then comes down and says, "Of course, you didn't actually mishear me, did you?" Because Anchuan says, "Everybody heard her suggestion. What are your thoughts?" She says, "I bet none of you have any objections, right?" But then, she explains for a dark ghost to stay in the human world for an extended period, they must form a contract with humans, otherwise they'll be forcibly recalled, and in other words, the Blade Ghost and Chen Pan are pretty much bound together. And so if Chen Pan dies, the Blade Ghost will be sent back to the realm of eternity. But their MC says that's not it, because even without a contract with humans, given Blade Ghost's strength, he could still operate alone. She then points the bat and says, "Kid, this is a meeting of the Black Vulture hunting team. Who are you to challenge my opinion?" Anchuan then says, "Let him finish. He surely can't be overly sentimental and reluctant to let his teacher Chen Pan die." And correct, our MC mentions, "It is as you said, because the ghost is so strong, so he can only stay in the human world for a limited time. But with his strength, he can still travel back and forth. That way, he could devour as many people as he truly wishes." And he explains, as both of them are kind of shocked by this, and it says, "Why bother forming a contract with Chen Pan restricting himself to 1 soul per day? It is really insufficient." He then says, "I think we should start investigating Chen Pan, because he might have some leverage over the Blade Ghost." Of course guys, Anchuan mentions, "So you do believe that Chen Pan is more like a restraint to the Blade Ghost, huh?" And he says killing Chen Pan would be even more disadvantageous for us. Sister Faye then says, "Yep, I agree with Chen Yi," and I just really love how Sister Faye is always agreeing with her boy. It might be because he rizzed her up after saving her from that headless beast from before. We then see guys, Mei Jue says, "Hey Mei Jue, have you been bewitched by that kid already speaking up from him?" She mentions, "I'm not siding with anyone. I just want to choose a path with the least sacrifice." Of course, the lady in behind then says, "Well, I just want to sleep, because Dan Ning probably used up all her energy." We then see Anchuan say once more, "Please abstain. If Dan Ning abstains, Shen Yi is not part of the hunting team and has no voting rights. And so he has to side with Chen Fei. It's 2-1. Let's start investigating Chen Pan." The settling is now dismissed, or that's settled and this is dismissed. And Mei Jue says, "Oh my gosh, really? It's like that guy never listens to me." And Lu Liu is the vice captain of the team. He is a B support level mask, and he says calm down, maybe their decision is correct. Yeah, Mei Jue just really seems like a hothead, and she kind of reminds me of that girl from Cyberpunk, and she says, "Really? Correct? I think they're all led by Chen Fei's beauty," and it seems she's kind of jealous, because even Lu Liu mentions, "Here you go again, last time we followed your tactics to destroy the teleportation gate, we almost suffered a complete wipeout, and even the vice captain isn't even on her side." She then says, "Tell him, I'm going to take him to defeat Chen Pan," and she is talking about Cha Liang, as she mentions that his team has a lot of healers and he shouldn't be that hurt after suffering just one little hit. The chapter starts and we see Chen Pan in the office with the president of the College of Architecture and Planning, Peng Shi. Peng Shi says it happened before too, because he is talking about he was beside the student who got death sleep syndrome. Chen Pan asks what he's talking about, and this bald-headed dude just says, "I'm not interested in you or the death sleep syndrome. I couldn't care less if you really put people to sleep." But then he says with a very gloomy look, "But that female student, if she falls into eternal sleep, she gets sent to the hospital, and isn't that a waste?" And of course the president says, "Oh gosh, I know what this guy's up to." He says, "Stop pretending, Teacher Shen. Didn't you lay a hand on the unconscious female student?" And of course, Teacher Chen Pan gets absolutely furious, and he takes off his tie, and he begins to wrap it on his hands. He says, "Every day I prayed when my wife fell ill. I prayed that she would wake up, and one day, my prayers were heard, but of course, I don't think the right people answered it." He then asks the president, as the president looks super scared. He says, "What would you do if you found out you'd have to sacrifice 100 souls to save your wife?" But then kaboom, he then punches him right in the stomach, and he starts to pull on his hair. I thought the dude was wearing a wig. And he says, "If I were you, you'd definitely choose to help him, right? After all, you even wanted to violate those innocent students in their sleep." But Chen Pan begins to punch him, and of course he says, "I endured the grief because he loves his beloved students." And this is quite sad, because I guess that Chen Pan really was a good teacher, but in the end, he did what he had to for his wife. We then see the president of college literally beat up so badly, and Chen Pan says with blood smeared across his cheeks, "I was willing to sacrifice everything, and you are no exception." The president says, "Ha ha ha, I'm gonna report you, and after I report you, your wife can't be saved." But then, Chen Pan says, "Patients with death sleep syndrome don't wake up, and they don't speak." And then of course, right behind him is the monster, the Dark Ghost, and he is a 98th sacrifice. The next evening, we then see Sister Faye along with her MC and the girl who kind of resembles Raven from Teen Titans, and they are gathered around. And of course, they are outside of the school. And yes, it's time to see if they can find any clues in the school. We then see them walking down the hallway, and of course, we see our MC on the phone, and he's talking to his sister saying that he ordered some takeout for you, and so it should be arriving soon, and he'll hang up for now. Of course, they then say, "I didn't think you'd be concerned about your sister," but obviously he blushes like, "What the heck, why are you two acting so strange?" They then enter Pan's office and they begin to scout and look out and look for things in the office. Chen Fei then finds something, and she says, "I'll check his computer, Chen Yi. Go check the bookshelf." She then notices something. She says, "Hey, Uncle Song, how is it on your end?" And he mentions, "Are Chen Pan and the Blade Ghost still at the hospital?" Old Song then says Chen Pan's car is still here, so they probably haven't left. But then, Faye mentions that she's probably going to eliminate Chen Pan, because of course he said that Mei Jue is on her way there and she is at the hospital. We of course see her walking and walking. She mentions that she's just here to gather information. And of course, we then see Faye yelling at her. Oh my gosh, she's just yelling at her in her earpiece, telling her that she's so troublesome. We then see Dan Ning, and she says, "Well, I haven't found anything." And so she uses her miracle incarnate skill. We then see a video of last night, and it seems like he's looking at a book, and it is a book of his hunting list. He then puts it in a cabinet, and our MC manages to find it, and we see number 90 is Cheng Wan Yu, And of course, Faye asks if there is a pattern. She says whether it's Chang Wan-yu or the guy named Shi Ri, they are families without support. But then our MC says with an absolute look of despair, and let me know you guys if this would be your same reaction if you find out and you found out that the 98th one would be your sister. It seems like our MC puts on his mask, and it seems he realized that of course Old Song was being deceived by Chen Pan. And Faye tells him to wait, but our boy gets out of there and immediately runs away. We see Duo holding on to the food because he of course brought his favorite cream puffs and she's ready to give it to him. But then we see somebody running in the crowd, and of course it is Faye as she walks right through her or beside her, but it seems like she didn't even notice. She then wonders if that's Sister Chen Fei, because of course they are literally just leaving from the school. She says, let me go and accompany my brother with the drawings tonight, and it seems like, oh gosh, what a coincidence. Duo is on her way to school, while of course her brother and Faye are on the way back home. We then see our boy open up the door as he puts away his mask, and he notices that the food he delivered is actually still warm and it hadn't been opened. We then see Faye enters and they are both in a state of shock, and we can tell by their looks right here, and yeah. We then see he opens up the door and we see brother is calling, and he picks it up, and it is Duo's phone. Of course our MC says let's go back to school, and then he slams on the elevator because it is literally going up, and he jumps off of the window, oh my gosh, off the cliff, and of course he lands and everybody is like, what the heck just happened? Anyway, he then uses his 1,000-foot enhanced leg strength, and of course he prays he makes it in time. We see his sister open and she says brother surprise, because of course she mentioned, well, not in the specialized classroom. Where is he? I should call my older brother to confirm. But of course she forgot her phone, and right behind her she looks back because she felt a presence, but then she says nobody's there. But right behind her, it is teacher Chen Pan. Our MC arrives, but there is already an ambulance with students and civilians gathered around, and he goes through the crowd, saying to himself in his head, no. But yes, we then see his sister, and in her hand is literally the treats that he likes. And I'm still surprised she's holding on to this, guys. I don't know why, they didn't take it out of her hand, but whatever, it adds to the story. And her MC yells, Chen Pan. And oh gosh, if you guys know how our MC is definitely angered now, Chen Pan is definitely not going to last. We then see is old man Chaoyang, the Mohawk dude, Fei Jue, the lady with the bat, Sister Fei, our MC, and Dan Ning, and of course they are discussing, and Fei Jue mentions it will be simpler to kill Chen Pan early on and avoid these complications. She then begins to reason, and she has a notebook in her hand, and she says that our MC's sister is 98, and Chaoyang mentions, this time I agree with Mei Jue's idea, because of course if he gets to 100, then that dark ghost will get way too strong, and yeah, it won't be easy with just a few of them. Sister Fei mentions it seems we have no other choice, we only have at most 24 hours. Sister Fei mentions you went to the notebook, right? And of course, on the second page was his mother. Fei Jue tries to console him, saying, ahem, kid. But why is she saying kid? I mean, he's definitely older than her, but you know what, for the sake of anime or manhwa, let's just keep it like that. Our MC says very gloomily, he suspected that it was accidental, but at the time my mother contracted death sleep syndrome, he was still Chen Pan's favorite student, and so the reason why he must have delayed doing both of them to the death syndrome as well was because of the guilt. He then asks, could I use her abilities? And he is referring to the abilities of putting on somebody else's mask. Sister Fei says as she's in front of him, just standing there, of course she really looks out for him. She says that is impossible. You can't bear the power of two simultaneously. RMC mentions, Sir Uncle Chao Liang, the fact that I can now possess the King of Hell mask means the previous owners, they all died, right? Chao Liang says, yeah kid, you are pretty smart. They all died during the process of mastering the miracle incarnation. Our MC then says there's no need for my miracle incarnation to beat him, and Fei Jue says, you only got talk. How are we really going to deal with this? He says this is the third point I'm going to make. Here, let me explain. And the look on our MC's face is a look of somebody who has gone absolutely insane. Oh gosh, I'm very scared now for Chen Pan, but hey, Chen Pan and the Dark Ghost, they really do deserve it. The Dark Ghost says, hey, your favorite student and his little buddies have left school. Should we catch up to them? And Chen Pan says, no, it's easy to alert them. The Dark Ghost mentions, why go through all this trouble? I already have 99. And of course Chen Pan mentions, yes, don't you remember that we devoured the principal soul? They'll assume that Qian Yi will be the 99th, which is why I deliberately left that notebook. And there's one more thing. He says, I care a lot about my favorite student, and he wonders what kind of graduation answer he'll give me. And what the heck, dude, you really worried about your student's graduation answer when you literally took out 2 of his loved ones? Then sees Sister Faye, and she seems to be in front of a garden or something. And of course, Chaoyang says, it's almost time. You're just waiting for the Blade Ghost to take the bait. She then says, Xian Yi, could you please repeat the plan? But he's literally sitting on the ground looking at the stars. She says, go discuss the plan with Meijue first. And Sister Faye says, your mask is too low. What if... But he says this is the only method. And she sits down and they both look at the stars together. He says that they must kill the Blade Ghost. Our MC also says that we see his mother here and she looks very elegant and she looks like a very caring mother. He says late at night, of course, his mother would softly wake him up every time he had nightmares. And so, after his mother contracted death syndrome, he couldn't save his mother the way she saved him from the nightmares. And this is a sad story. He says that gentleness is useless because gentleness can't protect the family. And only strength and power are needed to suppress any threat. And I might have to agree with this one. She tells him to calm down, and her MC says with a very broken smile and a heartbreaking look, don't worry, I'm very calm now, and this is the most calm I've ever been. She then notices something, and she says, Xian Yi, go in, our old enemy is here. The dark ghost appears out of the shadows, and of course he begins to walk towards the door. And he comes inside of this deep layer, and this seems like it is a box. We then see the lights turn on, and he wonders if it is a trap, and he says there's no use. But then our MC says with a very determined look in his eyes, I'll say this once, my mother and my sister, give them back right now. He then launches a strike with his sword, and the entire ceiling is cut, and all the glass begins to fall down. He says now the shadows are back, what can you do with me? But then we hear, miracle incarnation. He then looks behind him, and he says this isn't good, because in the crack of that box, of course it is Dan Ning, and she uses her miracle incarnation, Menomisin. And I don't think I'm ever going to pronounce that right, but let's just call it Menomisin. He goes to attack her, but just at that moment, we see Chaoyang block his sword, and he says it seems like you know about her ability. Of course, he can freely destroy the lights in reality to create shadows, but how will he ever destroy the lights in the memory? Of course, he says, and our MC says with his cool sword on his back, 3 hours before we arrived, we set up this place and kept the lights on. And so, of course, using Dan Ning's ability, we can bring that lights on for 3 hours. And so he has nowhere to go. We hear, it is Meijue as she has her mask on saying, let's go, we have to hurry. Miracle incarnation. And of course, I'm really excited to see what her miracle incarnation is, considering, well, she has such a loud mouth. We then see the dark ghost on the floor, and we see it is Meijue, and she goes to attack him with her bat, and kaboom! He gets set flying, and she says, 1 and 2. But what is she saying? She then explains, because we're going back to the past by the way, she begins to explain that her miracle incarnation is simply the 4th attack triggers a critical hit 100% of the time. And so of course, the longer the charging time, the greater the power. Our MC mentions, okay, so this is what we need to remember. We need to create a space where Blade Ghost cannot escape and make sure that Captain May's 4th attack definitely hits him. Captain May explains, oh, do you mean the driver from the first team Old Song? We secretly called him Minor, because of course, our MC mentions that the mask of Old Song is the deity of Earth, skilled in Earth excavation. And yes, of course, his ability isn't useful in a fight, but it is handy in mining. And so this is how he was able to put a box in the literal ground and surround it with light. We then see Sister Faye and she mentions, leave the lights and power supply to me. And our MC says, alright, once the 4th attack in the round misses, Blade Ghost sensing the massive destructive power, of course he will become wary, so we only have one chance. We need to make sure that Captain May's 4th attack hits. And so she says 3, and she hits him in his left side, and he gets sent flying and he is coughing out his saliva, and he goes to attack our MC, but then, we then see he misses our MC on purpose, and he goes to attack Dan Ning. But it seems like he took the bait. Uncle Chaoyang then uses a miracle incarnation, and we see all of the attacks go for his side, and he manages to dodge it with ease, and our boy really looks beautiful. Sister Faye yells out, Dan Ning, run, and her MC says, let him hit, because of course this is all a bait. He then stabs Dan Ning, but it seems like it was just a copy of our MC, and this guy yells out crazily, "You dang brat!" And so, four-way wind slay by Chao Yang hits him again. He coughs out a lot of blood, and oh gosh, right in front of him, guys, it is Major Wei, and this bat is about to hit for the critical moment. We then see the X's here, and finally the 1-0, and yeah, I don't think this guy is going to make it out of here alive. The chapter starts as we see Chen Pan, and he seems to be at an aquarium of some sort, and it seems he's talking to his wife, and she says, "How many years has it been since we went on a date after getting married?" He says 8 years, or maybe 10 or 12, I'm not really sure. And she says, "You almost promised to take me to our aquarium when we have time." But then he says, "Yes, but we haven't gone, not even once." She says, "Sacrificing so many people for my sake, it doesn't seem like you." And she says, "Really? Would you spend a little more time with me even if it's in a dream?" And he says, "I don't have any time left. I'll take you to an aquarium when it won't be in a dream anymore." We then see he's in the Uber and he leaves some money. And he says, "Keep the change." And of course we hear 4. And oh my gosh, Major Wei sends this dude flying to the solar system, to the sun, and he comes crashing down like a meteor. And we see his head literally combusted and literally ripped up. And we see the 4 of them looking at him, oh my gosh, and they look like the Avengers or something, and they say, "You've lost." And we see the Dark Ghost make a number 1 on the ground, and our MC says, "Give me back my sister." Chen Pan says, "I thought you would understand me, and I thought you would empathize." And he says, "I'm just an ordinary college teacher, I have no choice." And Sister Fei says, "Move aside, Chen Pan. Let us kill him. You still have one." He says, "My wife can't last that long. 1 year, 2 years, or 10 years? I can't wait that long." And he mentions that he planned to resign, and of course, for the few months of his life, he wanted to give it to her. Because of course, he has cancer. It then begins to rain, and he says for decades to have a clear conscience. And of course, he never expected for him to be taking the lives of students. He then says, "The human word, this is the real hell." We then see right behind him, oh my gosh, it is the Dark Ghost, and right there he kills him. And we see 100, the 100th. Finally, he is an S grade. And a huge ball of light emanates from the sky coming down to Earth, and it seems like he has achieved his goal. A news reporter then says, "Hello, I am Lu Haiping, and we are finally going over to cover the Yuhong district. It seems that something has really happened here. A huge fire has lit out, and there is a person floating in the air. Of course, it is Faye. And we don't really see the Dark Ghost here, of course, because normally people can't see it, but Faye is being choked by the Dark Ghost, and he lets go of her and her mask falls. And he says he was once belittled by those 8 dark deities, but now I am finally as strong. We then see him right here with these dark red evil stars, and he mentions, "I finally understand. It's not because of miracle release." And he looks at the defeated heroes, and he says S grade and A grade are way different, and the difference is way too much to cover. Our boy Faye then mentions as he's on the ground, just at this moment, he was promoted to S grade. We see him as his eye and his pupil is looking at Sister Faye, and he says the only one with combat ability left are me and the underground Dan Ning. But Dan Ning gets wrecked as well. The Dark Ghost mentions, "This time it can't be the illusion of the anglerfish, right?" And of course, just at that moment, guys, subsequently after he defeats Dan Ning, right behind him, the Dark Ghost appears, and he grabs our boy. And oh gosh, he steps on our boy Chan Ye, and he says, "Let me tell you a secret. Chen Pan's wife," oh my gosh, guys, this is a plot twist. Chen Pan's wife was devoured by him. And the reason why he talked to Chen Pan is because it would be easier for him to talk to 100 souls and get them. So wow, this guy really is a deceiver just like the devil. He then says, "As for your sister, I thought she would be scared out of her wits. But of course, when she looked at me with her firm eyes, just like your eyes, she really did have a little bit of fear." He then goes to stab him, and boom, he gets stabbed, and he begins to laugh, saying that he's won. Our boy Qian Yi is of course in the Eternal Realm gateway, and we then see a fist, and of course it then opens up, and it is the crown of Sister Faye. It then tells him to eat this, but of course if he eats this he's going to die. But then the thing and the voice explains, it doesn't matter when, it doesn't matter how, you're going to die either way, and if your physical body is destroyed, you're going to die nonetheless. And so, swallow it. Our MC swallows it, and oh my gosh, we see him here. It's like he's turning into a titan. And he has a sword literally pierced through his neck as he stands up. And he has an absolutely scary face right here. And say GG to the Dark Ghost, because yeah, this Dark Ghost definitely doesn't know what's coming after him. And yeah, the Dark Ghost just really screwed up, guys. So yeah, GG to him.